What's good, y'all boys, man? Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be speaking on the Soviet Union and how did they collapse as a state in general. So the USSR, aka the Soviet Union, aka USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, was formed after the Russian Revolution War, which eventually got rid of the whole Tsar era, right? The Ruddy Kid, all that stuff like that, Alexander, Peter the Great, all that era was the Tsar era. It was actually a pretty insane era because that era, it was a lot of mess, right? A lot of mess, a lot of people got in power, a lot of people who age was not did not have the capacity to kind of rule Russia and how large and how great or how big of a nation that it was during that time. So became a communist state in the USSR era. USSR eventually was co-founded by Lenin, by who actually led the Bolsheviks. Now I'm trying to see how much I remember about the Union, the USSR by itself, to be honest, because I first learned about the USSR in high school when I was learning about American history during the Cold War. I only learned about the USSR because it had some type of American history in it in school, because over here they don't teach you anything else great about other nations. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Right, the U.S. education system only care about USA stuff, anything that make them look great. So the Cold War was about the U.S. trying to stop the spread of communism and increase the spread of democracy, which yeah, they think they did an amazing job, supposedly, right? Because a lot of those countries that they enforce democracy on, a lot of those countries does not have any type of great things about them. For example, Libya, we know what they did to Libya and enforced democracy with Gaddafi. They overthrew Gaddafi, killed him, and eventually, you guys are now seeing what Libya is. They citizens are suffering. Libya is one of the most poorest country right now. And for another example, Haiti. For example, Haiti is one of the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. You know what I'm saying? So all those countries that got democracy imposed on them are now really seeing the wrath of what democracy is, right? And also when they are imposing those states, right, of government, the U.S. also have a lot of say so in whatever decision that country is making, which eventually makes it bad, makes it unfair to the population that's living in that whatever country or territory that may be. So yeah, let's get back to the USSR. Lenin, Stalingrad, those were what I could remember. Lenin, the Bolshevik. Lenin had a weird history with Russia. He actually eventually fled Russia for some weird reason and came back and actually gained a lot of power with the Bolsheviks. And there was a lot of famine also during those eras. And yeah, so the Soviet Union was really a very, even though it had included about 15 countries in the whole state of government. Those 15 countries did not have independent power. The power of the Soviet Union was very centralized to the government. Those other countries did not really have any say so. And a lot of those countries eventually gained their independence, which was at a later date, because the end of the 1991 was the time that the Soviet Union collapsed. So a lot of those countries is when 1991 is a lot of those countries, that's when they actually gained their independence. Even not too long ago, I found about Poland, who eventually got their independence very late. I was really surprised and shocked due to the fact that Poland has a very rich history when it comes to war, or them going to war, or them helping other countries. Like for example, they went to Haiti and actually fought alongside Haiti when they was fighting for their independence in 1803. Because they realized what the French were doing, and the French, Hitler eventually also did invade Poland with USSR. I also thought that USSR was actually helping Poland, but eventually it was not. So this is so far what I do know about the USSR. I haven't learned much deeply about the USSR, which we're going to do soon on the channel, because I want to know exactly what they stood for and what they actually believed in. But we know communism You know what? We know what communism is, right? There's no such thing as you say so, I say so. Nah, this is a very centralized power here, and I have all the say so's in this state right there, right? So here we go. Let's get straight to it. How did the Make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Why did the Soviet Union collapse? All right, let's get it.
As the Iron Curtain fell, over a dozen nations were finally freed from the heavy-handed grasp.
Who's this video by? Make sure y'all go subscribe to his channel. Knowledge. I was about to say knowledge.
Of the once powerful USSR. From its foundation in 1922 until its final demise in 1991, the Soviet Union and its allies made up an incredibly significant portion of Europe, essentially filling out the entire eastern side of the continent. A global superpower at its peak, the USSR somehow only lasted a short 70 years.
That's not short.
How was this possible?
That's not
and
short.
Why exactly did the Soviet Union collapse?
This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
We're not gonna be playing Raid Shadow Legend, buddy. Alright, let's get back to history. Is that an ad?
Cole, he's my miracle child.
So it's gonna be a
a
lot of ads in this video
there.
because I am not paying for YouTube subscription, bro. I'm not.
This is it.
I ain't got money for that. I'm broke. I'm broke.
If you asked Gorbachev, the final president of the Soviet Union,
Mikhail
why his nation and its
Gorbachev.
collection of
Gorbachev.
alliances crumbled before him, he would have one likely response: Chernobyl. The former president made it clear in 2006, 20 years after the nuclear meltdown occurred, that he truly believed this, above all else, was the final turning point into a steep decline for his Soviet Union. Whether this was the final straw or not for the Soviet people, it's no doubt that the Chernobyl tragedy was severely disastrous for the USSR. When the explosion occurred on April 26, 1986, the Soviet leadership immediately hoped to hide the startling problem from the people. It was evident from the start to the
What was the explosion about?
Out that the Chernobyl tragedy was severely disastrous.
Okay, so our next video is gonna be the Chernobyl, because I've heard of that name. I've heard some type of history about the Chernobyl, but I've actually have not really get a very much detail or deep detail about that incident.
The USSR. When the explosion occurred on April 26, 1986, the Soviet leadership immediately hoped to hide the startling problem from the people. It was evident from the start to the first responders and government officials that this explosion posed an enormous threat to the surrounding citizens, and the radioactive fallout it caused was roughly 400 times that of the Hiroshima atomic bomb.
What?
It was roughly an enormous threat to the surrounding citizens, and the radioactive fallout it posed an enormous threat. First responders and government officials that this explosion posed an enormous threat to the surrounding citizens, and the radioactive fallout it caused was roughly 400 times that of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. Yet still, the Communist Party was desperate to cover it all up. They gave no warning. And so May Day parades and other events continued to be held. Everyone went about their lives as normal, and no word was given. On May 14th, that President Gorbachev made his first public statement on the matter, during which he was very willing to downplay the reality of the failure and instead focus on bashing the West for what he called malicious lies and an over-exaggerated report of what had happened. It wasn't long before the truth came out, though, and the Soviet people became furiously aware of the corruption that they were under, and particularly the failure of Glasnost. Glasnost was a policy enacted by Mikhail Gorbachev that was supposed to restore certain freedoms for the Soviet people.
Okay, let's read exactly what the Glasnost was. Glasnost was taken to mean increased openness and transparency in the government of the Soviet Union. Was taken to mean increased openness and transparency in the government of the Soviet Union. Technically, meaning right, meaning no, we're not hiding any secrets from you guys, from our citizens. We are going to tell you exactly what's going on, and you guys are going to be in on what's going on in our government. And yeah, Glasnost reflected the commitment of the Soviet leader to allow Soviet citizens to discuss publicly the problems of their system, exactly what I just said, and potential solutions. Gorbachev encouraged popular scrutiny and criticism of leaders as well as a certain level of exposure by the mass media. Hold on, but if this is a communist communist state, this Glasnost policy would never work, because in a communist state, it's a very centralized power where others do not have a say so. So putting this out there, you are setting yourself up eventually for failure. So I don't see how this could actually help you whatsoever. So if anything happened, your citizens are going to be asking a lot of questions, because you allow them to have to they are expecting you to have some type of transparency with them, and they are able to criticize whatever is going on. They are able to ask publicly ask questions about problems that are going on with the country. So I don't see how this could actually work
such
in your
as
favor,
freedom of speech, press, and religion. It was intended to create
Freedom
a
of
better
speech.
way of life and more
Yeah, you set
transparency
yourself up,
from the
buddy.
government. And in some ways, it did work. But the newfound freedoms allowed the Soviet people to discover the
That's what I'm
government
saying.
cover-up efforts
Exactly.
of Chernobyl and expose their leadership's deep corruption, which led to a drastic decrease in public trust. This wasn't the only policy that would contribute to the Union's collapse, though. Another well-intended change was known as perestroika. The goal was to adopt a new economic system similar to modern-day China. The mixed communist capitalist structure would allow for more market freedom, and the policy also opens the door for new democratic elections.
Hold on.
Public
Let's see.
trust. This wasn't the only policy that would contribute to the Union's collapse, though. Another well-intended change was known.
So perestroika. The goal was to adopt a new economic system similar to modern day China. China today is one of the, if not one of the couple more communist states that we have in the world. The mixed communist capitalist structure, China actually blend in well with capitalism. So it works out great in China's favor. The economy is booming. The citizens of China don't seem to be having much issues. There's no outward. There's no just. China is a country that thinks ahead. That thinks of the future, bro. The futuristic things that they have built, the ports, the amount of ports they are building in different countries. Like for example, not too long ago they built a port right in Peru. Peru is in South America. Them building a port that just goes to show you we are trying to, business wise, they are moving in a great spot. They're not just building military bases in every country. Because for example, most of the great nations, like I might just use America for an example, which most likely I could always use America for an example because that's how they do. America goes to a lot of different countries, and instead of just, economically helping the government as there or the people or help something that's going to add value to the country, they instead build military bases and go for war, right? And that's one of the points that China actually gained ahead of America, is the fact that they are building and adding to the economy of that whatever country they are in, whatever contract that they have with that country. It's a economy adding value. So it's not something, okay, I'm gonna add a military base there. That's not going to add any value to my country whatsoever. If there's a famine there, the military base is not going to help, right? It's not going to help. So that's one of the points that China do have. And the policy also opened the door for new democratic elections. How does that work? Communist state, democratic, what are we talking about here? The Communist Party will still remain in. So the Communist Party will still remain in control while they also opening a door for new democratic elections. Even with these elections, but the freedom of choice was nevertheless believed to be a significant benefit for the Soviet people. So let me try to understand this. It's a communist state where the power is still centralized, but to the population of the Soviet Union, it's like they still have that democratic system benefit, as in freedom of speech, religion, all those other things. So, but they could actually. I'm confused. What exactly were they trying to do here? Someone in the comment section, explain this to me, because I'm a little confused.
Known as perestroika, the goal was to adopt a new economic. The reason why perestroika was enacted may have also been a relevant factor to the Soviet collapse.
Obviously, because this
Though
doesn't
it
make no
had
sense.
previously been remarkably successful, the Soviet economy was now falling apart. There was a brief stint of recovery around 1970, but that was short-lived, as the Afghanistan war became a new source of spending for the Soviet government. This greatly restrained the recovery path, and the citizens of the Union began to grow tired of living under a communist regime, with poverty plaguing the people and communism seeming to be the cause. There was a severe need for change, which is what would lead Mikhail Gorbachev's later reforms. But as we know, this produced yet one more failed attempt to shave the shaky foundations the government were trying to stand on. The nail that sealed the coffin for the end of the Soviet Union was the events of 1989. After years of living under a Soviet shadow, the Warsaw Pact satellite states of the Union, including Poland, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia, began to face their own challenges and the downfall of Soviet-friendly regimes. Other nearby communist allies, such as Romania, also faced revolts that would sever their ties to the Communist Union, and the Berlin Wall over in Germany.
Monday.com, the opposite of any work platform we tried in the past. We tried other work management platforms, not naming,
would once and for all be torn down. Ethnic conflict, anti-communist sentiments, and overall disapproval was building even from within the USSR itself, and instead of putting an end to it, the government, yet again, failed. The reason why there was even an opportunity for the opposition that rippled throughout the East in 1989 was due to a poor strategy utilized by President Gorbachev in his bid to resurrect the Soviet economy. After spending years as a frequent critic and enemy to the US, Gorbachev decided that the best way to create his successful economic reforms would be to build a better relationship with the
sucking up
West,
to the US.
even though the United States particularly was still far from a potential friend for the Soviets. Hoping to calm these
The USA should have been one of your main enemy. They do not support communism. What part of that? Hold on. I need to know exactly what year was the Cold War. What year was the Cold War? Okay, let's see. The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension that reigned from approximately 1947 to 1991. While the exact starting and ending points are debate, that's not important. But 1947 to 1991, many historians mark the beginning. Blase. The conflict is generally considered to have ended the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Okay. So 1947 to, so that means from 1947 to 1991. That's not how long the Cold War lasted. But the US was enemy number one for the Soviet Union. So why exactly was you sucking up to the US knowing they did not have your best interest at heart? I wouldn't understand why you was going. Yo, Chad, that don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. There was bound to be a collapse because I feel like they kind of lost the plot to what exactly they wanted to do with the Soviet Union. And due to the fact that it's 15 different countries in that, there's no way one centralized government could control 15 different countries with different languages in it, bro. Poland, Romania, Czech, I can't pronounce. Hungary, East Germany, what was Ukraine was in it? Who was Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, bro, Estonia, Moldova. There's no way that one centralized power could actually control and maintain power and maintain control of all those countries that eventually speak all different languages and have all different cultures. There's no way it was gonna work, bro. There's no way.
The West, even though the United States particularly was still
Bulgaria.
far from a potential friend for the Soviets. Hoping to calm these tensions as the first step toward friendship with the West, Gorbachev promised that the Soviet Union would withdraw from the nuclear arms race against the United States and even reduce their own military presence throughout the globe. Gorbachev decided to subsequently pull out of the Afghanistan war and reduce Soviet military presence throughout their satellite states. This sudden deterioration of an overbearing military throughout the Warsaw Pact's nations and what appeared to be a weakening of international Soviet influence is what would trigger the following events of 1989. Still, it wasn't just the withdrawal of military troops that hurt the USSR. It was also the mere state of their military at the time. The Stalin-era policy that prioritized the production of military equipment over consumer goods and basic necessities for the Soviet people.
This is an insane. This is a catastrophic policy right here. What did Stalin do?
Military equipment. Stalin-era policy that prioritized the production.
How do you, in your head, get to the point where you prioritize military-based weapon instead of basic necessary consumer goods for your population? No, in all seriousness, bro. What was Stalin thinking, bro? It's like you rather your people suffer, your economy going to complete disaster. You rather all that happen than to have just a bad military base or a military in general. I don't understand, but as soon as you need more manpower, you are going to call on those same citizens? Make it make sense. Make it make sense, bro, because this don't make no sense at all.
Of military equipment over consumer goods and basic necessities for the Soviet people was no more. And with the economy tanking, Gorbachev's military was crumbling too. The consequences of his perestroika drastically reduced military spending, and in turn, the military might of the Union. There were also external factors, including an arms reduction treaty that the Soviets had tried to push off for as long as possible until 1988. This required the Union to cut its military numbers by 500,000, while roughly 15,000 of the troops over in Afghanistan had been killed. Pushback against the draft only worsened the problem, and once standing at over 5.3 million strong in 1985, the Soviet military was now reduced to a startling total below 2.7 million in 1991.
Taking the time to savor Thomas's crunchy yet soft bagels.
I'm not paying for
Thanks,
YouTube,
Tom.
bro. I'm sorry.
It's Tom, actually.
We ain't trying to hear what they saying there, but we're not paying for YouTube, bro. I'm broke. How about you hit the subscribe button, pal? Yo, 2 ads is insane. I'm not gonna lie.
With its people fighting back and an attempted coup by Communist Party opposition, Gorbachev's Soviet Union was in its final hours. On December 25th, 1991, President Mikhail Gorbachev announced to the world that the USSR was no
December
more. Mikhail
5th.
Gorbachev announced to 25th,
December
1991.
25th.
President Mikhail Gorbachev announced to the world that the USSR was no more.
Wow.
This was the end of the Soviet Union altogether, as it could no longer withstand the weight of its mistakes. At 7:32 p.m., the flag of the Russian Federation rose in the place of the Soviet flag atop the Kremlin. The new president, Boris Yeltsin, would take the helm, now the leader of one nation, with 15 new neighbors who had once been joined together. We are now living in
So the failure of the 1991 August coup, when Soviet government and military elite tried to overthrow Gorbachev, led to the government in Moscow losing most of its influence and many republics proclaiming independence in the following days and month. 15 former Soviet republics declared independence: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia was part of it. That's crazy. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Jesus Christ, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan, bro. How many stan is there, bro? That is insane. But it's crazy how much countries was just under that one centralized power, bro. That is insane.
new world, rang the words of
And knowing that the fact that the Soviet Union all had military base influence in all those countries. There's no way that it was gonna last forever, bro. The fact that they actually last 70 years is actually insane. 70 years is seven decades, bro. That's a long time. You know what I'm saying? That's a long time regardless. So actually lasting for that long under one centralized power while trying to impose a type of democracy on those same people is insane. I don't know how they expected
last
that to
president
work. I feel like that's
of the
where
Soviet
they
Union.
failed.
The answer to
If you're gonna be a
why the
communist
Soviet
state, be a
Union
communist state.
collapsed may differ depending on who you ask. Gorbachev believes it was a result of Chernobyl, while others point to his own policies.
I think the
Perestroika and
the
glasnost.
glasnost, yeah.
Still,
I
others
really
blame
think
the
that.
broken economy or decaying military. The reality is likely a sum of each of these theories. Without the economic chaos, perestroika would have not been necessary. If not for glasnost, the Chernobyl scandal may have not been so easy to uncover. Furthermore, without glasnost, it would have not been so easy to uncover.
That's a fair point.
The Chernobyl scandal may have not been so easy to uncover.
Exactly. Without the glasnost, it wouldn't have been easy to discover, because there wouldn't be no such thing as free speech, right? Free speech, allowing them to criticize the government, public scrutiny. What's the word? I forgot what that shit was. Scrutiny. That's the word. I'm not American, bro. That's not my first language. Leave me alone, bro. Leave me alone. But yeah, allowing them to be able to have all those insight about your government, and you having to be very transparent with them, that is not communist. And when you allow that, if you have a communist state, you are looking for a failure of it. You're not looking for a successful story. You feel me? So I have no idea what
without glasnost, drafted soldiers would have not been able to speak so openly about the despicable conditions they were forced into, and the military may have not shrunk so much. It also may have not been so dangerously reduced if Gorbachev had not been so extensively determined to begin appeasing the West. Or maybe the Afghanistan war took too much of a toll on the military and the economy. More military spending and strength could have kept the satellite states in line and prevented the Berlin Wall from falling. Every potential reason for the dissolution of the USSR is intertwined with yet another reason. Even Gorbachev's theory of how his union fell apart is only a potential turning point, not the sole cause. The reality is that it took a series of mistakes and miscalculations to bring down the Soviet Union. And while it may be easy to blame the last president for destroying his own nation, it's important to note that a majority of his own mistakes were simply attempts to correct the flaws of his predecessors. In all actuality, the reason why the Soviet Union collapsed comes down to a long string of repeated failures on behalf of its leadership.
Nice video though, very detailed. I can say he didn't miss out on nothing because I don't know the full story, but 100% nice video. And me in watching and listening to what I just heard, I really think the glasnost was bound, and I feel like that was the main reason why the Soviet Union collapsed, because that policy would never, ever, ever match with the type of government that was in power. If you're gonna have a centralized power, have a centralized power. Adding that policy was more like the start of having a decentralized government. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so let me know in what's your thoughts on that? What do you think was the tip, was the start of the Soviet Union collapsing? But yeah, make sure you leave a like on the video, man. There's more videos coming soon, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna be working on a lot more videos, a lot more history. So if you do love some history videos, man, you wanna react and watch and learn and have fun, this is where to be. So just hit that subscribe button, man, and we're gonna be learning a lot. So I'm gonna see you on the next video, man.